Thank you. There we go.
All right, good evening. This is the March 3rd, 2015 Finance Committee meeting tonight. On the agenda, we've got some reserve fund transfer request, and some updates about the budget for next year, them are the main policies, and the CPC. And Keith Bergman will be down to talk about that in a little while. So why don't we start off, Bonnie, if you would, with the reserve fund transfer request?
We have two reserve fund transfer requests, both from the Veterans Agents, but for different purposes. What I did is I wanted to provide you with a copy of the reserve fund transfer balance, which you have not had any approved transfers this year, so the balance remains at $150,000. And then the next item in that little grouping is the request for some training funds. The Veterans Agent is required to be certified for fiscal 15 and onward. There's a certification process. Mr. Borowski has paid these expenses out of his own pocket right now, and it is looking to get reimbursed for them if possible. So I wanted to get this to you as soon as I could get the numbers together. He is looking for $1,000 for this fiscal year. There was training scheduled for February, and then again in June. So that should cover it for this year. For next year, he's already adjusted his operating budget to incorporate the required training, so this will resolve itself and clear itself at this action. He only has $7 remaining in his expense account, as you can see, so there's not really much room. The next item, also under the Veterans Agent, is for veterans benefits.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm just trying to look at the numbers. So I'm seeing February and June training of, oh, I see, so that comes up to $1,000.
Yep.
So that's it, and he's got $600 in his budget for other expenses.
Yes. He had $660 in his budget for other expenses and for travel, so he's already exhausted that.
He put this in on December 1st.
Yeah.
So he already spent the $600
Yes.
on other training or other things?
Other expenditures that need to
Okay,
happen for the
all right,
department.
all right, just want to make sure I understand.
So for next year, again, his budget is adjusted so that the training is covered and it won't be an issue going forward
This is training that's required?
for the certification.
Another unfunded mandate from
Yes,
your state.
absolutely.
Okay.
The next item is for veterans benefits.
Just the travel anyway. It looks like the training, there's no charge in here for training itself, it's just travel.
It's the travel expense.
I'm sorry, all right, go ahead.
The other item is for veterans benefits, and this is an ongoing item. We seem to be funding quite a bit more. We did bump the budget up this year by way of a supplemental appropriation at the special town meeting from $35,000 to $70,000, hoping that that would address it for the year, but it's not going to. I'm projecting, based on February's activity, of the 9,100 that I printed there for you, if I annualize that and cover the February deficit that I'm holding on right now, it's another $48,000 into the budget. So his cost annualized would be about $120,000 instead of the 70. So that's,
So what are you going to do in 16?
well, I wanted to ask the board if it would be preferable that I adjust the expenditures now for 16, or adjust the budget based on the 120 that we
Should be
think,
in there.
yeah.
So, go ahead.
That's going to increase the deficit, or are you just going to shift money around in
No,
his
it would
budget, or-
increase the deficit, but I'm going through, and I'll, in the budget update, I'll tell you what items I'm waiting for to kind of clarify where the
Now,
deficit
so
is.
Okay. Now, what was the actual from last year?
Let's see. Last year's actual was 73,316.
Okay, so we should have trued it up last year.
Well, we did, we
For the-
brought it up to 70
We
for
did
this
bump
year.
it.
Well, but in the original budget, we didn't, and then in the fall, we kicked it up.
Yep.
Okay, so it's really a 70 to 120 increase. It's not a 35 to 120 increase.
So again, and the increase is the number of veterans that are applying, or the amount of money each is getting?
It's a combination of both. You know, there's more individuals served, but there are individuals that get more benefits depending on,
What's causing the spike? I mean, aren't we, I mean, is there any reason for, that? I
We
mean,
have
just,
lots-
they're becoming
We still got veterans coming back from Iraq and Iran, and
Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, and the job market is just not there.
Okay.
A lot of this is reimbursable, isn't it, or?
It's
75.
75%.
75%, okay, so even though we increase our budget, you also be increasing the revenue projection, right?
It happens in the following year, so I get,
But it's a year, it's sort of like what you.
But
we
for our
used to call
budgeting
free
purposes,
cash.
we'll always be carrying an
Right,
increased
always be.
revenue projection,
Right,
too.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does go into the revenue projection, it just doesn't fall through as,
nope, it comes through, it's actually part of the whole cherry
Free
sheet
cash.
calculation.
yeah, right.
Is there a way to have it flow back into the veterans, so it,
Like a revolving account type
yeah, I
thing?
mean,
It's a general fund receipt by statute, so it's, I mean, you could appropriate it.
It
You-
comes bundled with all
with
the other
everything else.
stuff, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah,
but we know we're getting 75% of the 120 back.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Hopefully Governor Baker isn't going to cut one of those. I know he's
don't
working on
think
his
that
budget
they've
for next
touched
year,
that
right?
one.
Hopefully, he'll leave that alone. It'll be something he won't touch, but see about everything else.
So those are the only two, I say only two, but it would take your account down by about a third, so.
Nothing else in the horizon, we hope?
I don't see anything right now.
Well, if we spend it here, we can't spend it someplace else.
No, we
Trying to
took
give
care
people
of
ideas, that's all.
legal fees, finally been taken care of?
I've got to get an update from Tom and Jen
Good
on
question. It's
that.
usually the one that comes, right?
I
Yeah,
saw it was the one
usually-
we get every year.
Usually March I get kind of,
Okay, so what do you need from us, a motion?
a motion for each one.
For each
I
one?
move that we approve the request for reserve fund transfer for the veterans agent for veterans benefits in excess of the current budget in the amount of $49,000.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Thank
So you want us
And then the other one for 1,000 for the training.
Move that we approve the request for reserve fund transfer for the veterans agent for required training in the amount of $1,000.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do you need us to sign the document, Bonnie, or we decided last time that you don't really need us to? You do want us to? Yeah. Okay.
all of us or just the chair?
A majority. Want me to start the snow and ice?
Sure.
Signing? So we're at that time of year, rapidly. We arrived at this time of year where we need to access the deficit for snow and ice removal. You might remember that we budget $200,000 within the operating budget for snow and ice expenditures, and then we also budget a $450,000 deficit to have a total of $650,000 available for snow and ice. We were doing really well until the end of January. I was thinking we were going to have some capital money available maybe in the fall, but now I'm not so sure. I'm pretty sure that we're not going to have any. As of today, I had provided you with a memo that I had given the selectmen on February 4th, but as of today, we have spent $459,000, or incurred expenses totaling $459,000. So I have about $190,000 left when I add the two accounts together. I'm hopeful that that's enough, but I do need a formal vote of both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee in order to release the checks beyond, and I'm holding them in my office right now, so.
The selectmen already voted.
They did.
Okay.
Yes. As a hedge, we have also, I should give you an update on the FEMA, MEMA issue. We did receive an invitation to apply for an initial damage assessment application for Juneau, which was that first big storm that we had. So we submitted that, and then we had a conference call last week with the governor's office and MEMA, and they stated that the governor is going to try a different tactic with MEMA and FEMA, and try and treat the 4 weeks of expenditures as one continuous event. And try and, it would capture more costs. It would capture snow removal costs from the roofs and everything else, and submit based on that. So we've done 99% of the paperwork needed. The application needs to be in by Friday. So we'll have it in by Friday.
So ballpark, what are the two scenarios? I mean, what are they worth?
It's hard to ballpark it. It's probably, I think Juno was
Did they give you a
80,000.
reimbursement range? How much they're gonna reimburse you, like?
But she just asked.
That's what
70
I was asking. It's just-
We don't know? We
Well,
just-
I need to capture all the costs first, and generally, they'll reimburse you up to 75% of
Okay,
those
that's what I was,
costs.
right, 75%, okay.
75% of the extraordinary cost is what
Right.
they're saying. So
Overtime, snow removal. They don't reimburse you for your regular highway employees plowing during the business day. But if they stay over and have to be paid overtime, then that counts.
what about if we call in contractors?
Same thing, it's contractors are outside, we call them when we need them, they count.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just regular wage employees that should be budgeted elsewhere.
Okay.
That they don't
But
count.
still, you're talking about possibly 80,000 is what you said.
Well, that was from the first storm, so,
Okay.
I mean,
Oh, I see.
multiply
Oh, so
that
it'd be
by
more than that it could
4,
do for
you
it.
know,
Okay.
at
Oh, wow.
least. It's
Cool.
quite a bit.
All right.
I'm not hopeful that we'd receive that by year end, because first they've got to get through, are they going to allow it in that format? FEMA has never done that before. And then if they do, I'm sure it's going to take time, and it'll come in after the end of the year. So just as a hedge in case we keep incurring expenses, I asked Keith to add an article to the special town meeting to appropriate from free cash or undesignated for snow and ice, just in case,
In case we need it. Yeah, it's a good
we
idea to have a
blow through the
placeholder there.
deficit and we keep going and.
Hopefully we won't, but yeah.
Yeah,
That's if we get over 650, right?
right.
And we're at 409 now, and you have
No,
more
we're at
bills?
459.
459.
And I don't have all the bills in yet, so. I mean, I'm hopeful that we don't need it, but,
Yep.
Well, yeah, it's only March, though, so
Right.
we'll see how that goes.
you never know. So what I would request is, the motion is prepared for the selectmen, if you want to just read that and insert the finance committee instead of Board of Selectmen, so that I can start deficit spending.
I'll move that the Finance Committee vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D, to approve incurring expenses in excess of available appropriation for snow and ice removal for fiscal year 2015.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you. So Park and Rec, I am meeting with Fred tomorrow from Park and Rec to go through, crafting the budget and figure out what they've decided for decisions on what they're going to make changes in their hours or in the job descriptions. I know they've talked about a lot of different ways to try and tackle solving this. We met, in a kind of an informal setting a couple of weeks ago, and they had identified a $100,000 problem, essentially. And in meeting with, in discussing it with a couple of the Board of Selectmen members, a few of the Park and Rec members, one of the things that kept coming up is they are spending a lot of their money on maintenance and facility issues for non-revenue generating projects, like Fay Park. They can't charge for the use of Fay Park, but they have to maintain Fay Park. There are certain expenses at the beach that they have to maintain regardless of the revenue stream. If there are issues that come up, if the sand needs to be replaced, if the, whatever, they need to expend that. If playground equipment breaks down at 300 King Street, they need to fix that too. Mulch and other things. These are facility and infrastructure expenses that don't bring them in money. So we said, well, how about if we build into the capital plan, similar as we do for other departments like fire department, like highway, like police, for facilities and infrastructure expenses in the amount of $50,000. And then you have to go fix the other part of this with program changes, staffing changes, whatever, to solve the other half of it. So I know that they've been working on that. The Board of Selectmen did support that formally. by way of the capital plan, which I'll go through after. But that's kind of where we are with Park and Rec. I haven't seen the formal budget yet, but I am meeting with him tomorrow, so as soon as I get one, I will email it off to you so you can take a look at it and bring it up for the next.
So what are we taking off the capital list to do this for?
We
Park and Rec?
didn't swap anything out. There were a couple of changes, and I'll walk through on the capital plan, but we didn't, usually when I start funding capital, I've learned I don't put everything out on the table, like, I know what we can use per the fiscal policies, but I don't throw it all out there, because there's always something that gets added in at the end. So we're still under, a little bit under what we can spend for capital out of undesignated.
Right, and it was like 50,000, not to get into the details, right? It was like 50,000 we're gonna give them?
That's what, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And I think we could have spent like another 72, I think we could have spent 72 more, so the 50 didn't.
What's the status of a new director? And who decides that, and, you know, what they're looking for, and, you know, so because this is all still stopgap stuff for a endemic problem that the thing is not working.
I mean, the real story is I don't know yet until I meet with him, but I do know that they were looking at the job description itself. They were taking a step back and taking their time to really review the job description. Their plan was to make any changes that they needed to make. If they were going to discontinue driver's ed, for example, they were going to take that out of the, you know.
And is that part of the plan?
I,
You don't know yet?
Until
Okay.
I meet with them, I'm
Okay.
pretty confident that that's probably
Okay.
what's going to happen. But then they would go to personnel, get that description graded to see if there were any changes, and then they would come back to the Board of Selectmen with a request to post the position. So right now, they're operating with other staff covering the duties in the meantime, which offers some level of
And then
savings.
the committee, the board there really is driving all this. They're doing all the work then, right?
Right, right. And they are an elected board, so they have that autonomy in that, but they are working, you know, closely with the selectmen. They've been,
But they reaching out for
Communicating.
help where they need to too. I mean, that's the other piece of it. I mean, it's good they're doing it, but especially when you start talking about hiring and, you know, direction and all those kind of things, that, you know, hopefully that's a
yeah,
bigger thing. And they're, you know, people who are skilled in the town staff and so on, who can and should help them.
They got plenty of people right here to help with that.
Right.
yeah. I mean, they've contacted me a couple of times with questions
Okay.
on process and, you know, what to, you know, so I've been back and forth, you know, a number of times. I'm sure they're reaching out to other people too.
Okay.
If they write a new job description, it's got to come before the personnel board.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll look at it before we send it to our graders to decide what the job title, or not job title, but what the grade should be.
Okay.
And then from then, they start back through the money chain. So,
Has anybody asked Jim to look at what this really nasty winter is going to do to his highway budget?
Sick and then drive it
In
over.
terms of fixing the roads and the potholes that are raising a holy heck in the town already? You know, we're talking about taking 50,000 of what you had tucked away for Park and Rec, might be the right thing to do. Now we've only got 25 extra thousand to put towards extra potholes, or, I mean, has anybody started looking at that, or is that going to be a nasty surprise in the
I
spring?
think that Jimmy is so out straight right now with snow removal that,
Right, but,
but no, I mean, we have a certain amount budgeted for crack sealing and road repairs annually. It's like $100,000 that we
Right,
use
but-
annually. In prior years, he hasn't used all of that. It's been, you know, around 50 or 60. He might use it all this year. He might come back from, you know, for more, but I would anticipate him using the full 100 that he has budgeted. And what doesn't get used, gets used on the roadway plan, so it doesn't go away from the budget. It just gets used for whatever project is coming up, like New Estate or Neshoba or whatever.
okay. I can't imagine that the way the roads are beginning to feel, that
Yeah.
he's not going
He's
to
gonna,
blow through that 100 grand pretty quickly.
I think he's pretty happy with that hot box
Yeah,
unit
yeah,
that he got.
yeah.
I think he's, you know, that's a helpful thing to have
They
on
do all
hand.
that work in-house too, right, all the patching work?
Yeah,
A lot of it, yeah.
quite a bit of it.
Okay,
Sometimes
well,
they'll,
so I was thinking the same thing driving over here, Fred. I was
Roads
thinking,
are getting,
Well, wait till all the snow thaws and all the, you know, the water starts to get underneath the
gonna get-
pavement and
it's
everything.
gonna
like,
get-
It's
it's
just
gonna
gonna
get
get
worse.
worse.
Yeah.
But they're doing it ongoing.
Go to hell,
I
man.
noticed today a couple of places that I went over had been potholes have been
Already,
patched
huh? Yeah.
with,
Yep,
Yeah, the cold.
yeah, with cold patch or the hot box.
yep. Last year, the state actually came out with some extra pothole money through the Chapter 90 program. It was like
Okay.
$60,000, so, you know, you can't rely on it, but maybe, you know.
Okay.
They gave us an extra 60,000 on
They
a
did.
budget of 100?
They gave us an extra 60,000 from a pothole account at the state. It's not our budget. It's,
I
I
know,
mean, it was.
I know, but our budget's only 100, and we got an extra 60,000
And
from
that-
the
and-
state for potholes?
Yep, and they went out and used it.
Okay.
Well, we do have like the worst roads in in the country, so we gotta uphold that reputation. We can't put too much money into fixing the roads, because, but we'll see. State's building all those bridges now, so I'm sure they're tapped for infrastructure and everything else that they're spending money on, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right,
All right, do you want to do capital or the school budget discussion?
no, we're doing capital, let's just keep doing capital.
Okay. So there's a memo in here that the Board of Selectmen voted to recommend and support, as requested by the Finance Committee. I know that the Finance Committee had requested that they prioritize and put together something that would be important for them to see done. We have done that, and I'll just kind of walk you through it. We did have 2.8 million in requests for capital. Last year, we appropriated $1.7 million. Some of that was in May, and some of it was in the fall. So it was in, two different town meetings. Like I said, I don't anticipate any funding in the fall for capital. So of the 2.8 million in requests, we can support $1.9 million in capital projects. So what I'm recommending is that we have the funding sources shown to you. 918,000 of that $1.9 million is coming from undesignated. And that, again, that was the increase from 870, which was in the previous version. It's still within the fiscal policies, the amount that I can spend. 350,000 per the Finance Committee's recommendation at their prior meeting is being allocated to short-term, or it's coming from short-term debt service, but it's being allocated and recommended to the Capital Stabilization Fund, and the board supported that. The remainder of the funding is from accumulated long-term debt service reduction, so as the debt service is paid off, we grab that money and use it only for capital or other projects. So I did state that the board supported the 350 going into the Capital Stabilization Fund. That balance right now is 211,000, so this will definitely bump that up. So that leaves us about $1.6 million available to spend on projects. And I've identified those by department grouping, just to make it a little bit easier. We have no recommendation for Community Preservation Act new projects in this version until the financial policies have been kind of vetted for that group. And there's no real pressing need for any of those projects to be authorized right now, so it seems like they can wait.
So, okay, so of our capital plan this year, then, there's nothing in there for, no, that's the other way around. CPC is things, is another way to fund these things, is what you're going after.
Right,
Okay.
there are no CPC
Okay.
projects proposed at this time.
You've accounted for that recent one, the housing one from the Housing Authority?
18,000 or something?
They're up there talking about it now, so I have a placeholder in my
Okay.
worksheets, but I don't know what it is or how much it is, so we'll have to see what that is. And where it's coming from, like a kind of a private entity, these other ones came from town entities, like town departments, historical.
Well, they're an elected town board.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure how the policy is going to treat those types of requests. Are they going to be treated in the same manner as others or private?
Yeah,
or-
I think they will, simply because it's housing, and 10% of the funds have to be spent on
Oh, yeah,
housing. Yeah.
yeah,
I think town money has been spent over there before
it has.
on,
Yes.
on
Yeah.
repair projects.
Yeah.
It has. So in this draft, we have, I'll start with police. We have 164,000, no changes based on the previous memos that we had, but it's just the patrol vehicles, interceptor patrol vehicles, both marked and unmarked.
So this is a 3-car year?
Yep. Yes.
How many vehicles do they have now? I've lost track, to be honest with you.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
It's in our budget book. Matt walked through
I
that.
have it,
Yeah,
yeah.
you did, I
remember.
just,
I
I
don't
have it
remember
with
the
me.
don't
number.
remember. Okay,
I
all
don't have
right.
it with me. He did put it in the book, though.
That's fine, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
12,000 for the radio system infrastructure. This was something that was new last year. It covers the maintenance contract. It paid for itself already, so it's worth having.
Does this tie into the high school system,
No, this is the radio system for dispatch and.
or just
Yeah,
dispatch? Okay.
Dispatch, fire, and everything, all of the safety systems. It's about $1 million in infrastructure that it covers, so. And the vehicle maintenance tires, primarily tires for the vehicles.
Absolutely hate that.
Fire department, 577,000, no changes again.
Maintenance.
Major equipment and repair for 15. Protective clothing replacement for 12. This is the turnout gear replacement program. And engine 2, which is 550,000. It's part of their fleet reduction. It replaces 2 vehicles with a combination rescue pumper vehicle. Highway department, 190,000, no changes. 15,000 for major equipment and repairs, 25,000 for the Mack truck that has the frame issue that was identified this year. And a backhoe at 150,000 to replace a 1992 John Deere. Pretty good,
Got our money's worth out of that original one, I think, huh?
yeah.
Is that the price after trade-in? Does he trade that in, or is he going to
That is
do a
the
little maintenance
price.
work on it and give it to the cemetery or something?
No, actually, what's happening is there's a, like a 98 vehicle that's there now. They're going to ship the 98 over to the transfer station and take the 92 from the transfer station and trade it in. So he's cycling through.
So everybody wins.
Yes. Everybody gets a newer model. The schools, there's a slight change into it. The amount went up by $1,000, but they did change some of the items within the grouping. They reviewed the priority order. The school lease payment is $35,000. It's a second-year payment on MacBook Air laptops. High school, $45,000 for a classroom life skills retrofit, and I believe that the superintendent said that this is a program that generates the money, so they wanted to make a priority of making sure that the classroom was fit the right way.
Is the income from that the
Yeah,
generating one?
where's
Is
the
it?
income on that? Yeah,
Going to
yeah.
them, I'm sure.
That could be an offset?
It's going to them. I'm sure it's in a revolving.
All right.
Let that be reflected in the budget.
Yeah.
School freezer, $6,000 to replace the evaporator motors and controllers. Chromebook computer systems and equipment replacement, $45,000. And other miscellaneous technology equipment at $25,000 for like audio-video type of equipment, projectors, televisions. So that's the change there. Cemetery, this is an item that was added. I originally had pushed it off not to be funded, but, and funded maybe in the following year, but Craig has a quote on a trade-in for the model that he's looking to trade, and that will expire after town meeting, so he's like,
Yeah, he didn't like the 2013 model or something, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And it's a different model. It would work better around the stones and the,
whatnot,
yeah, that they,
When we reviewed it.
Yeah,
He actually wanted to do it this fall.
Yeah.
The current model doesn't work as well on the hills.
Yeah. So is this something that you would pull into the special?
I had actually, no, I didn't, but we could.
I mean,
I had originally had this earmarked for maybe fall funding, but now that I know that we're probably not going to have any money in the fall,
pull it back
I
in?
pulled it in.
Okay.
So what was your question about putting in special as opposed to regular
Well,
town meeting? What does that do?
If he can do it in the special, he could buy it.
Earlier.
Right, then he doesn't have to wait for
He
the new
doesn't have
fiscal
to-
year.
He doesn't have to
Right.
wait till July.
Okay.
And we can certainly do that.
I mean, I just,
Yeah, that's a
you know,
good
for
point.
$5,000, it might
Right,
be
yeah,
worth
I
just
agree.
if we can fund it.
Oh, yeah, we can. Yeah. And then the facilities and infrastructure
Good thinking.
amounts.
Didn't think of that.
I know, I didn't either. We have an earmark of $427,280 in items identified by the facility study recommendations. We'll finalize that list. I think you're meeting tomorrow night,
Yes.
so
yeah.
sometime after that. And any of the items in there will be those named in the study. It's, you know, some of them.
So, can you talk to the, so is this like, if you had $1 million, would you still say what we need is 427, or would you say, you know, you went to the list and said, well, these are the ones we really have to do, but we really should have this amount of money?
We use the database from PMB, or whatever, the EMG, thank you. And that was what was recommended for this year.
Okay.
I think we still have some deferred maintenance, or it's not maintenance, deferred capital projects that we haven't funded from previous years. So if we had $1 million, we probably would have gone back and pulled some of them forward.
But you're comfortable, this is a pretty good number, and we're taking care of things as we need to and so on?
This is what we asked for.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
So as I recall, there was around $1 million
A year.
a year. Year one, we funded 450 or so,
Yeah.
430,
508, I think.
508, okay.
Or I can't remember now.
Okay,
I
around
can't-
$500,000
About
bucks.
$500,000.
Now we're doing
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
$500,000
It was
bucks.
close to $500,000.
Yeah.
So in year one, we did a half, in year two, we're doing a half, but there was a year zero, which was over $1 million. There's a year one, that was over $1 million. In year two, which is over $1 million. So if you add up those 3 years, it's $3 million, and we're funding about $1 million of it, about a third of it, ballpark. Was there enough fluff in there that you're really comfortable that we're okay, or are you guys getting nervous about the $2 million that we're sort of leaving on the table?
The recommendations from EMG, some of them were, it would be good to have,
Yeah.
But not
I
needed,
agree.
right.
No, when we looked
not
at the
not
first list, it
immediately.
was,
I mean,
but-
we went in and did kind of a sniff test on it, you know,
Right.
is this really necessary? And some of them were not. Some of the information, I think, was, although it was accurate, it wasn't complete. The boilers in the school, for example, they recommended just replacing the tanks, but apparently the whole system needs to be replaced. So Steve Mark got some prices on that. That came in at, I think EMG's cost for the 2 tanks was around $14,000, and I believe the system was about $70,000. So we're starting to look at these a little bit more closely.
So is the 70, for example, is the 70 and the 468? Okay. Okay, great, okay. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like we wasted 50 grand.
A number of those things come up
least
as
we're not
like
wasting
the
2 more million.
$3,000 oil change. You know, that's the recommended,
Right,
but doesn't always have to be, you know?
Yep.
that's fine. Just so we're not doing like Mr. Weld did with the MBTA when he put them into bankruptcy, back when he was, Mr. Present Governor was working with him. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
The other item is the fire station modular building, that's $6,000 annually for the sleeping quarters that are attached to the building. This is the new item, recreation, major equipment and repairs, it's $50,000. It was originally in there at $10,500 as a request. So we modified it and brought it up to the 50. And then the cemetery HVAC system for $25,000 to repair that system. And
Well,
again,
that's actually a replacement, not a repair.
oh, it's a straight replace?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the HVAC, yeah.
All right, let me just. Okay. And then I did identify some items, if there were any money remaining that, maybe could be funded in the fall. the master planning services are one of them, highway, mini excavator, cemetery.
So we dumping the money for the master plan, because you don't have it, or what?
No, I think you might want to ask Keith when he comes down. There's some discussion about engaging the services of a regional, planning agency to try and address that, along with, participation from residents. And it might be able to be accomplished within even the existing appropriation. So he's actively working on that. I think he might have some,
That's not the MAPC group, please tell me it's not them.
I don't know if it's MAPC or Magic or another one. But the money doesn't go away. It's still captured in an article, so it will stay until the master plan is done.
Okay.
So those are the recommendations that were approved by the Board of Selectmen at their meeting.
I assume Jim and the secretary or the cemetery, excuse me, are talking. The cemetery's looking to refurb their backhoe for $25,000. I mean, are we keeping the best 2 out of 3 that the town has?
Yeah, Jimmy and Craig work very well together.
Okay.
And Jimmy and Craig work on a lot of the procurement issues together.
Okay.
So even paving and everything.
Yep, no, that's great, okay.
So did we talk about Park and Rec, 43,210? And that was what was added, right?
Right.
And that's for what?
Where are you, wait a minute.
Right, we're talking about the request of Park and Rec, 43,210 for capital, right?
It's on the back
Last
Brian.
page.
That's the last, that's the 43,000, yep.
Right?
But there's no detail here.
There's no
Yeah, no
detail.
detail.
That's all the stuff that Bonnie talked about, all the,
Oh, no,
just the
maybe it's in
maintenance
the-
and stuff
oh,
that
wait,
they
no.
do.
No, it's a feasibility study? Is that what it is, 43,210? You
What?
paid to
The
be expanded by
43,210 was-
Recreation
yeah,
Commission,
there
feasibility,
were-
soccer field development?
Yes, that was part of
Oh.
it. So we didn't, that's not funded in this. It's just what was requested and what was funded out of it. So
But I thought we were giving them, like, putting 50,000 in
if you look
capital to
at
help
item
their
6,
deficit or
item
something?
6, here. You can see recreation, major equipment and repairs, 50,000. Item 6. 6C.
6C.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right, and what was that gonna be for? That, I mean, that's just like a
It's
50,000 for operating expenses?
No,
or-
it's not operate, it can't be used on operating, it can only be used for repairs and maintenance to the facility. So if it's like, beach sand, that would be,
So it would take
It's-
away what they've been normally spending, like you were saying, with Park and Rec or Fay Park, where there's maintenance.
Non-fee
Things that
generating.
they don't get any sort of revenue for.
Right.
This would now be getting charged,
to that
those
account,
expenses?
yes.
How are those not operating expenses?
Well, in the discussion that we had, it was one of those things that we looked at it if there were no Park and Rec. Okay, say Park and Rec closed their doors and there were no
Right,
Park
but
and
we
Rec.
wouldn't,
That's not what,
we wouldn't put that under capital. There was no Park and Rec. We'd have that in our operating account under
you
maintenance.
could put it under operating, you could treat it like we do the highway, the fire, and the other departments where you have a capital account for
Maintenance.
major, yes, major equipment and repairs. It can only be spent on major equipment and repairs. It can't be spent on electric bills, it can't be spent on office supplies. it
Right,
can't be
but,
spent
I mean,
on-
capital should be generally a $10,000 or more item, and rarely you spend $5,000 or more per item. Is usually what I'm used to capital being, and not a,
I don't
not to,
disagree
not
with
to beat down on this, but I mean, $50,000 for maintenance, I mean, they're gonna be just charging a $150 invoice to this, and, just general, way I look at it as general
I don't
operating
disagree with you, I've
expenses,
seen
but-
it done different ways in different towns. This is the way that Littleton has done it since prior to my arrival.
Okay,
If you want to put it into the operating budget, the
Yeah.
only issue is, now it can be spent on
Anything.
anything.
We did that years ago with police, fire, simply because there was money that was supposed to be spent for tires, et cetera, that
but,
ended up
yeah.
funding other things.
This is gonna have to be on there again next year, because if we don't, we're gonna
It's
put them in
planned.
deficit. They-
Oh,
It's
yeah,
planned to
it's
be on it
planned,
every
yeah,
year, just
right.
like the other items are for the other departments. So,
Yeah, all right, I'm not gonna keep harping on that, but I
Good.
don't look at that as capital, but that's fine.
That-
We'll leave it at that.
I don't dispute you, I'm just still hung up on the last one. The master plan, was there any kind of discussion on that? I mean, that was a pretty major item in the list, and then it gets dropped into the potential fall list, which we hear is not going to get funded at all. That's a significant change in strategy.
What item?
The master plan,
Oh,
There
because
was,
this group that Keith's affiliated with is going to come in and do it for free with us, right? Yeah,
Or under the
we've had the
original,
work-
anybody's going to do it for free.
but they have an original
Oh,
appropriation
Well, I mean,
that
this is the same outfit, I think that, well, you apply for a grant from the state, and they're part of the state, wink, wink, and they get 35 employees, and not one of them is a lawyer, or a planner, or an architect, or an engineer, so they do wonderful work of regurgitating to you crap that they pick off the shelf from other towns, which is what they do. So I think it's too important a project to do it on the cheap. But I just wondered, my question was, what kind of discussion ensued on that change?
There was some discussion. I'm not up on all of the
I mean, was it
planning.
an
Keith will be
agenda
down in a little
item?
bit, we can ask Keith when he comes
Oh, yeah.
down, too.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was part of the capital discussion. There were items that,
but we appropriated 100 and something thousand at the fall or whatever, right? For the,
We've got to have over 100.
we have
Yeah.
113.
Well, we had a joint meeting where we went over the capital list, and that was on it. And now there's a subsequent meeting of the, selectmen that we weren't at, and then it was dropped out of that?
It was on it when we weren't when we weren't reserving the 350 for capital stabilization. I had it funded. I had used all of the 350 on other items. And then it was discussed that maybe we ought to take that 350 and put it aside in capital stabilization. So when that happened,
Well,
I had to.
okay, but I remember the discussion that we're able to put aside the 350 for capital stabilization. I don't remember with that, here's the things that are gonna get axed as according it. I think I remember it as being, we're not gonna lose anything off that list.
right?
That's what I remember, because I mean, the question came up, well, how are we able to save 350,000 without losing any of our priorities of the list? Well,
Well, I mean, the list is 2.8 million, and I'm only funding a million,
Yeah, I don't remember that. I
million
don't
nine
remember the
items. I mean,
discussion
we
of
never,
simply the
there's
master
always
plan
items
money.
that get pushed. There's
But
always-
but the idea was that things would come off the list, we weren't gonna spend it all, so Bonnie was gonna reprioritize and do what she does and talk to people and, but.
but if you take a look at the other 4 items affected, they're kind of, one's other amounts of capital statement, that's meaningless. So there's 3 other items, a $7,000 plow, which is, the low end of the highway, request list.
Right.
Cemetery, 25, backhoe, he's getting something else. Highway, mini excavator. Again, these are items that are already getting other departments. This was a significant
I don't disagree.
policy priority, and
Right.
it's zeroed out,
Right.
as opposed
I
to
agree.
knocking a couple of pieces of it off the bottom of the list.
I guess we'll
Well,
have to see what Keith says.
talk with the
Yeah, I
selectmen
mean,
about
Just
it.
see what Keith says.
This was
too.
what the board had supported for a spending plan.
Did they didn't recommend it, or they?
They supported it as is, without the, and they recognized that the master plan funding was being pushed.
Yeah.
If there's another recommendation, obviously.
Well, I just think that important a topic should have been
Discussed.
and agended.
Steve, on a little different question, under topic 6 here, the facilities and infrastructure, the 470,000 that hopefully will get approved, that's got to be a fairly long list of relatively small projects, or is it, are you going to have a list so long that you guys can't handle it, or
No,
how do you feel about it?
Oh, you mean as far as us managing it?
Yeah, it just seems, can you guys handle 15 projects or whatever number of projects that this
Well,
adds up to? I don't know what
we've
it
been
is.
talking about that. We're going to have to divvy that up. We divvied them up last year. The majority of the items, and I can't remember, but I think, Bonnie, it's around 200,000, are all asphalt-related,
Yeah, I remember.
something like that. And then, of course, the boilers, and can't remember the entire list off the top of my head.
So it's not that many projects that you guys will feel overburdened trying to handle X number of projects?
I think to be determined.
Okay, okay.
You know, it depends on when in the year they fall. I believe that we're going to be overseeing the replacement of the HVAC unit at the cemetery.
Yeah.
That's not on our list, but it's a capital program. So we need to identify all the projects that we're responsible for.
Okay.
But it's a good question, and we've been talking about it.
Okay. Is there a threshold that you'd be comfortable saying if it's more than a $40,000 project, it should be a PMBC oversight? If it's less, then the local maintenance group should be able to do it, or
Department.
the department head can do it or not, or is it, there haven't been that much stress on you guys yet to yell?
Well, it's the type of project, and I don't think dollar value and type
Okay.
are compatible, or you can't equate them.
Okay,
So,
okay, good. I'm sure you'll yell, Uncle.
we may.
Okay.
I think it'd be nice going forward that we got like a list of that, just to have an idea of what it was, just in,
Well, Bonnie sent it out the other day. I don't know if you wanted to share it with,
Yeah, if
This
you're,
group.
if you're
Yeah, all right.
good with it.
Just-
I didn't know if it was still
I-
in draft format or if it was,
maybe after tomorrow night. Yeah.
Okay.
okay, so that's where capital stands. And then we have the school budget. I'm gonna pop this one in. So this is just a spreadsheet that I had put together regarding some figures that were provided by the school committee, and I was really happy to get the detail out of the report. Chris Hinckley was helpful in kind of providing some guidance on what that meant. But we ended up, the school committee ended up coming to the selectmen's meeting at the last meeting and providing some additional feedback from their original request and the town feedback. So it's a couple of different columns to go through, so please bear with me. But if we look at the spreadsheet in front of you, what I did is try to put into some context the 2014 budget to actual, the same for 2015 budget and what I'm projecting as the actual, and then out against the different versions of the 2016 requests. So in the first grouping, you can see the school budget, the salaries for school choice funds were budgeted at $200,000. $299,000 was actually spent in 2014. Expenses in circuit breaker were budgeted at $250,000, but $650,000 was spent and required to be spent. It had to be spent.
You say salary for school choice, what is, I don't know what that means.
They budget $200,000, traditionally, they budget $200,000 of salaries out of school choice. So it's not just the general fund appropriation, that's the budget, it's the general fund plus grants, plus revolving, plus,
So this is
Everything
choice
else.
in.
Okay.
Pays for that.
yes.
Choice in,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, Choice In generates about $400,000 a year, so they spent, some of that on salaries, about $300,000. So of a budget that was, for these accounts, just these accounts, because these are the major spending accounts, that was budgeted at $16,850,000, $17,347,000 was actually expended in 14. For 15, what was budgeted is $17,650,000. And I'm projecting that, it's going to end up just over 18 million with what they've got for expenses in out-of-district sped placements. So taking that information and then comparing it to the school request for 2016, what they're requesting is what they started out requesting was a town appropriation of 17,833,000. So that's kind of footed down in the middle here. I backed up into how they arrived at that figure, but it's the $16,700,000 that was appropriated for 2015, plus $512,000 for wage increases, which were step and lanes, $100,000 for additional staffing, a 1.5, And then 400,000 for special ed increases, 30,000 for Chapter 222 expenses, which is the expenses you have to pay to educate children that have been taken out of the district for disciplinary reasons. You have to educate them anyway. There were 37,000 identified in other types of expenses, and then 50,000 for resource ELA and science expenses. So that's what makes up the 17,833,000. In addition, they had budgeted using 185,000 in school choice funds and 700,000 in circuit breaker funds, which is the amount they have to use next year. So the total spending from those accounts would be 18,718. That was the original request. So in reviewing the details and going through the payroll spreadsheets, I have the 512,246 for actual step and lane changes. However, I removed the additional staffing because that was a request of Selectman Carr to make sure I identified any staffing increases and remove them out so that we could get a true level staffing budget.
Yeah.
I also saw that there was a position in the spreadsheet that was vacant all of this fiscal year. So it translated as a staffing addition into 16 also, so I backed that out. It was 74,000. And then I noticed that in actually, Steve Mark provided me the info on the retirement savings. So as teachers notify us that they're retiring and we know who they're bringing in for a replacement, we can estimate what the savings would be, and that's about $76,000. So I backed those figigures out. And
That
then,
savings in salary by retiring someone who's making more money and you hire someone less experienced and makes less money. It's nothing to do with retirement accounts and so on.
Right.
I just want to be clear on what, for
right,
everybody,
it's
what this
salaries,
is.
yes.
Right,
Yes, you're bringing in a newer person at a lower rate.
right.
It happens every year,
Yeah,
so
right.
it's
Okay.
nice
Yep.
that we're
Right.
accounting for it.
Now, the special ed increases, what was referenced was a $403,000 increase in special ed, but when you look at the special ed costs from 15 to 16, special ed actually decreases out-of-district placement, not the special ed in the district, out-of-district placement. So it's tuition, it's the collaboratives, those types of expenditures. They went down by $25,000.
On actually spent, not budget.
From what
Actually
we
spent.
know what we have for 15, and when we roll it over into 16, we know what students are coming, and.
Yeah, right, so we're talking actuals and not budget, which is what Steve was using to get his 403,000.
Right. So the actual expenses went down
Down.
by 25,000. Also, the circuit breaker funding, which is used for special ed, went down by 126,000, because they used 826, or they're going to use 826 and 15 here. They were only going to have 700,000, it's actually $700,099, so it's 125,000 less. So I netted the two together to show an increase in special ed funding that would be needed 15 to 16 of 100,194. I included the Chapter 222 because it kind of smacks of something that there was forced on the district, but, so I kept that in there. I removed the other expenses and the resource ELA because I didn't really know too much if that was a new program or something else. And I came up with a town meeting appropriation after doing all that of $17,192,000. I currently have $17,250,000 programmed as a placeholder, so it's less than what I have. And then I kept the 185 that they're using, that they're proposing to be used from school choice and the 700 from circuit breaker, for a total spending of just over 18 million. Your question?
Did you include, so on the backup that Steve sent around, or you sent us, that Steve sent you, that you sent
Yep.
us, in school choice, he had sped tuitions 135,238. Is that in your 100,194?
I am,
Because he charged that directly to school choice.
I'm doing that, that came after. This came from, I'll go through that one.
So
And,
the-
yeah, and that's, yeah, so hopefully, yeah, that's, I don't even get into that, but.
Okay.
okay, then
So,
the school choice quote total used. The first three columns here in 16 are 185 grand. And your 228 town revised is 390.
correct.
So that is an incremental 200,000 is that coming out of their reserves, or is that, where is that?
They get 400,000 in annually.
Oh, okay.
So it would just come
So-
from it would be, almost fully utilizing the revenues that they get in that
Okay,
fiscal
so,
year.
so that won't draw down reserves?
No,
Okay.
not
Yeah,
unless
one-
they,
Choose to,
Right.
or need to.
right.
Right, yeah, they should be budgeting $1,000,001, with school choice and circuit breaker, because that's what they're expecting to receive in 16. And if they, as Bonnie's gotten pretty close to the $1,000,001, or she's got $1,090,000, that's just new money, and they're not even tapping the $1,003,000 that they may have in balance combined, so.
Okay.
So at the last selectmen's meeting, the school had an opportunity to look at the numbers that I had put out for a few days. So they brought this column that is titled Revised by School. They acknowledged the salary offsets for the new staff and the retirement savings, so that was okay. They did keep the sped increase at 362, which is slightly down from the 403 that they had started with, but it's higher than my 100,000. And the Chapter 222 they were fine with, and they acknowledged the other two deletions for expenses. So they had a revised town meeting appropriation figure of 17,455,000, which is 205,000 more tthan what I have plugged in there right now. The same use of school choice, the same use of circuit breaker. So a total spending plan of 18,340,000 of these accounts.
So the only real change is the 390 versus the 362.
That's, yeah, in the one that I'm proposing as if they want to maintain a spending plan of 18,340,000,
They would use.
I would say use more use more school choice funds.
And they're aware of that
Which is-
alternate funding proposal from you?
This is just as of this week, so I need to do another update for
Yeah,
next week's
I was
meeting.
gonna
And I
say,
wanted to introduce it to you tonight.
Right.
as
Since
discussion.
Peter and I did sit down with Bonnie and Steve kind of walked through all her analysis here, and that was after the selectmen meeting. Subsequent to that, I did contact Mike Fontanella by email. I know they were going to be meeting about it last Thursday night. I don't know what come out of that, but I did get an invitation from him that there'll be another budget subcommittee meeting this Friday, so
I saw
Peter and
that.
I will be coming to that.
Okay,
There
good.
was no, I didn't get any alarming, we're mad about this, we're upset about that,
No,
whatever.
I didn't either.
So,
Okay.
And
And if,
their reasoning to want to maintain the 362 is
Yeah, where do they have to support that?
2015?
yeah. The problem in the 403, it's not a 16 problem, it's a 15 problem. The sped increase for 2015 is up by like $260,000. It's 260 above what they have budgeted
Yeah, oh,
between
yeah, oh, definitely.
the
Oh, I know
out-of-district
that, yeah.
placement
That's what- that's
accounts,
past
the
practice.
the
Yeah.
collaborative tuitions, and the circuit breaker. So
They don't
I'm going to
wait
kind
until
of go
they have
through
to
that,
spend
but
it, they'll
before,
spend it on something
before I
new.
Yeah. Oh,
navigate
that's
away
what
from
they've
this
been doing for
page,
years, right?
I do want to point out that even with the higher use of school choice funds that I'm recommending, as long as they stick to their spending plan of the 185 that they had proposed and use the additional 205 out of school choice, they'd still have $500,000 in school choice funds at the end of the year as a reserve in case, something extraordinary happened or something. So it would not be, I would not propose completely wiping out the reserves. I mean, that's just not a good.
No,
And this
You know,
is only
practice.
choice. What are the other reserves that they have?
We typically look at choice and circuit breaker as the reserves, and not so much circuit breaker anymore, because you have to spend that.
Right.
So really, choice is their main one, but, they have other revolving accounts, but they're typically program-related. It's like lunch.
yeah, but they should be
ISN.
accounting for bus fees and transportation.
Yep.
Athletic fees and transportation.
Yep.
That's over $200,000, right? If it's an offset to athletics for the fees they collect, no problem, it should be in here as an offset.
Right.
It's 100 and something thousand, same thing with bus. They collect, these bus fees and they spend it on transportation bills.
We have, giving them the spreadsheet that I think I gave you that showed the GL activity going back, and wanted to get that as a projection going forward, because it incorporates all of the revolving funds, all of the grants.
Yeah.
Grants are like a wild card. I mean, there are years, you know, you get $1 million in grants and then 300,000.
Yeah, right, the stimulus years, right, I mean.
You know, so, but that's, you know, when you get $1 million and you program it as expense, and then it disappears,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
that's a problem, so.
So these numbers here still are not reflecting their total budget.
It's not all in, no.
Oh,
Their
no.
total budget spending is like 20 million.
Yeah, there's like, you know, 2.5 million that they spend outside their appropriation that is what I've been preaching for, is to try and,
Mixed
is get
opportunity.
us closer to that amount every year, which we're getting with
Transparency.
circuit breaker and school choice, but like I said, there's other funds, other money they get that they don't account for.
So
but-
in your scenario, the town reserved,
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting them to have 550 in choice
Right, at the end of the year.
and another 700.
700 in circuit breaker that they'd have to use the next year.
Okay, but there's $1.2 million there.
Right.
With 700 basically just rolling forward.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Now, they could, if push came to shove and they really, really needed it, they could use some of that 700 in 2016, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So they have, if something really awful happened, they have the ability to spend an incremental $1.2 million. So that's really what they have in reserves.
yeah.
But realistically, we're hoping that at least that 700 will be available to roll forward to 2016.
Yeah, I mean, if it all got spent, it would be a Band-Aid and we'd have a problem.
We'd have a huge, right, okay, all right. Okay.
So when I looked through, okay, this is just the accounts that are used for OOD is out of district, special ed, budget to actual. So in 14.
We don't have this now, right?
No.
Okay.
So,
So in,
It's there.
yeah, in 14, the budget for the private tuitions was $1.2 million, and the collaboratives was 750. So a total in the general fund, this is within the general fund appropriation, was $1,950,000. Circuit breaker was budgeted at being spent at $547,000. So the total out-of-district budget was almost $2.5 million. In 2014, the actual spent out of the general fund between those two accounts was $1.8 million. So there's $150,000 within the general fund appropriation that was earmarked for special ed that got spent somewhere else in the general fund budget. Circuit breaker funds had to be spent at the $647,000 that we had in receipts, so that was spent. So the actual to budget was pretty close. It's just that they're different accounts.
Right.
And, you know, I'm not trying to beat things up, but there was a shift of $150,000 somewhere in the general fund from special ed to,
Right, and then that's when they tap school choice for, right, the special,
Right.
the sped tuitions.
right.
Right, so they underspent their general fund budget for tuitions by 100 and whatever, but that got spent someplace else, and then they took what they were supposed to spend in the general fund budget for sped tuitions and charged it to school choice, or picked up the slack there.
So we know for fiscal 2015, based on the data that we have now, that these line item, these accounts, we need 2.7 million. This 2.739, that's what it really is, based on the data that they gave us from the accounts. What's budgeted between these accounts is 2.450. So there's a problem just in 15. So what will happen is they have to pay those expenses. So they'll use the additional 820, or the additional 75,000 that they have in circuit breaker funds, and they'll use school choice to fund whatever shortfall that they have. So that's why in the previous sheet, I had pushed their school choice
Higher, right.
higher than
Yeah.
the 200 that they normally used. I pushed it up to 500.
But hopefully those kids aren't, I mean, hopefully those kids are graduating or whatever, I mean, tuitioning out, because if not, you would think,
But that's
all
why
that's-
there's this big increase requested for special ed in
so
16, because it's really the 15 expenses that are,
Rolling
bumping
forward.
everything
Right.
forward, yeah.
So that's okay, so that's why the 403.
right,
And they're trying to hold on to the
Right.
362 as recoup that short.
correct.
Go back to what you just had up. I still don't understand why they budget numbers that they know are not actual.
Well, I asked, about that, like this one here, the 950, I asked, like, why did you reduce the budget from 1.2 million when you know you have 2.7 million to pay? Why was this brought from 1.2 million to 950? And the answer I got was, well, we were told we had to use more of our reserves. I said, well, that doesn't change, that just changes the accounts, it doesn't change the budget. So, the bottom line is, it's a 15 problem. It's not a 16 problem. The 16 special ed budget is
I don't-
down slightly.
Yeah,
The
but I don't know
funding's-
how it's not a 16 problem unless these kids are leaving the district, right? I mean, I don't know how, if they're on the hook for $300,000 more this year, I don't know how it's gonna go away next year. Like, that doesn't,
I think some of them are. I think if you look at the
Yeah,
worksheets, that
yeah.
you'll see some transition.
it all falls on your sped director and keeping track of who your kids are, who's potentially moving into town and projecting this out.
The
because-
document that they gave us to back up the out-of-district stuff was great. I mean, it was extremely helpful. It was nice to see, it was redacted properly, it was,
But keeping that current and getting it as
Is
early as possible is
critical,
the key.
yeah.
Necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that we know it can be done, there's no reason it can't be maintained.
Right, we're still talking about it in March,
Right,
going into April,
right.
rather than November going into December.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But hopefully, we can get there next year.
Yeah, and effectively, by, when the school's open, two things have happened. One, they know what their current school year population is, and two, any certification from the state on the prior year has already been done by then, too. So really, with, same as every other department, they ought to know by September, and as we say, we asked for it in November.
Yeah.
All the same numbers that we've been told all along, you can't get till March.
Right. Yeah, they should definitely know those numbers much sooner, so we're not.
Yeah, and as you were pointing out earlier, too, we still don't have all the spending on one piece of paper, which.
No, right, yeah, we're still about a
Is that something you
million,
can-
whatever
you can-
off.
I can tell you
Promulgate.
where you've been. I mean, I can give
But I
you all.
mean, you could generate in future iterations a sheet that shows, all that spending as well.
I can give total spending for actuals.
I just
So
think it's important
I can go
for-
backwards.
Yeah,
For the townspeople, when they look at it, they get the whole picture.
Yep.
Doesn't matter whether they're paying for it through their state taxes or the town taxes, they're paying for it, and they
Yeah.
Right.
know about
the other big one is that full-day kindergarten. I didn't know they even had full-day kindergarten, and they're collecting $250,000, $300,000? What are they collecting for that? And that's not even accounted for. I mean, there's just a lot of money they
I've
collect.
shared this document, but he's looking at,
Where is
this
that?
is the total.
Yeah. So they offer, obviously, full-day kindergarten. Yeah, they collected, well, 232,000 they collected in 14. 232,000 full-day kindergarten, so, but whatever, so.
Well, this is a huge step up. I mean, a lot of people
Yeah,
did
we're
a lot
getting
of
there.
work on this,
We're
and
moving in
this,
the right
and we
direction.
appreciate the school department offering, giving us the
Yep.
information we needed.
Yep.
And Bonnie and Chris and Paul and everybody else who was involved in this. This is a huge step forward, and not only helping us this year with this year's budget, make sure we have a fair number in there, but gives us a good baseline for going forward. So going forward, we'll be able to, and have comparisons. And I think, the recommendations made here is that we just improve it a little bit more, so it includes all the revenue streams. So we really do have the total picture.
Yeah, so.
It's good for everybody. I mean, the
Right.
total transparency for everyone is all good. So
Yep,
this is great.
absolutely.
And we appreciate everybody, the cooperation with everybody, too, working together and coming up with this. So now, all right, so other questions on this? Or do we move now to, where are we in general in terms of the budget now
Well,
for?
The warrant, the last opportunity to insert articles is next Monday at the Selectmen's regular meeting. The warrant close, I think, the Friday following. So any changes that you see, I've printed the draft warrants for you, so you can take a look at them. The capital plan article is in there as recommended by the Selectmen. So if there are any changes,
Would the language under the current capital article allow for addition or changes, such as with the reconsideration of the master plan, or would that require another article to be added?
that would require another article, or changing, that article to include an amount to be appropriated for capital, I mean, for,
Well, okay, which could happen
Yep.
after next Monday, right?
Right.
I mean, I just want to establish if is we are like, oh, too late, Monday came and went, and you can't.
if you, they inserted the warrant articles as printed. So I think if you want to have a placeholder for master planning, I think it would be appropriate to say, add an amount to be appropriated without a dollar figure, because
Right.
that can be modified on the floor, but you'll have the purpose in there. I don't
Right.
think after Monday you could add that in there.
But as in process, or place specific, it would be on this list that is between pages 4 and 5 in here, is that right? Article 7,
Yes.
rather than an article on its own, right? It would just, with those other studies and study recommendations, right?
You're on the annual town meeting?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it would be in the other section, but.
Okay.
So I could report back to the selectmen that you would like to have, if the board wants to have a, item C, master planning, and then an amount to be provided for master planning services, and then we could figure out you could figure out the amount later. But it gets the item on the warrant.
We have to bump something else though, right?
Ultimately, you'd have to
Yeah, yeah,
reduce
right, I'm saying,
something,
right,
or,
right.
Yeah, well,
whatever.
this is, we had this conversation before, when did this become the tail at the end of the dog, the item that has to, account for itself? It was considered a higher priority, and then it's bounced out, and now it has to justify itself as opposed to other items that have been lumped together, which, I'll make that pitch to the selectmen. Most of them enthusiastically campaigned on it, you'd think they'd want to follow through on it.
Well, they don't have to run for another 2 years, Paul.
Yeah, they got time to do as they please. So what is our projected
Yeah, that's-
deficit gonna be if we take the schools, the money they want, the
The 750.
17,455, what does that put us at?
That would put me at about a $500,000 deficit right now. I was at 321. I recovered 20,000 from Minuteman because I had a student that aged out, so I don't have to pay
So we only
that
have, what, one kid there now?
one kid next
Okay.
year. So that saved me 20,000. I am starting to get some inkling numbers from health insurance, and I'm looking at like a 12% increase.
What'd you budget for? 10?
I budgeted for 12. So
So
now
you're
I'm going to
trying
go
to-
through enrollment. 12.1, I think, was my number. I was kind of surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go through enrollment figures because, I know where everybody landed, at the last open enrollment. So I'll go through and see if we have some room there.
And based on our new financial policies, we can't go into town meeting with deficit or
Right.
into the new year
So
with
I
a
need to
deficit, right?
solve this deficit, yeah.
What was that number, about 500,000?
If it's the 17,455,000 number that they proposed the last meeting, then it's 500,000, it's 501,000 right now. But I'm not done going through health insurance, and I don't have any state aid figures yet. And the governor's going to release those figures, at least preliminarily, in the next few days, so
Okay, so you said what, 550?
500.
500, okay, so we're between 300
to
and
5.
500. Because
Right.
if we go with Bonnie's recommended town appropriation for the
Yeah,
school,
250, right?
yeah, we're at $300,000 problem.
Yeah.
Well, master plan will take care of that.
And the schools are coming Monday to discuss their budget more, or where's their budget on? What's the status of the 17,455? That, the selectmen are gonna discuss that, or where is?
That was the request made at the last selectmen's meeting. So my thought is, you have a joint meeting posted next week.
It was on the schedule that way, but
Right.
I don't know if the selectmen know, we haven't said anything to them about it, so I doubt if it's going to happen. I was going to ask about that, because they also invited
On your
us.
schedule?
Well, they agreed to it when it was planned, so I mean, I'll
Yeah, that
remind
was,
them.
what, next week
That
before
has
we
never
bump
mattered.
Yeah.
this
Right.
one up.
And I know on next Monday, we've been invited to come because of the CPC discussion there as well. For the
Yeah,
Monday night meeting.
realistically, we probably ought to be there then because they won't show up the next night.
I mean, we really need to get the recommendations, started so that we kind of figure out where we
I
are.
would recommend we make our joint meeting
Yeah,
Monday
Monday
night.
night, I
you know.
agree.
Yeah,
Has
just
Keith
get it out of
already
the way,
set the
right?
agenda for Monday night?
It's in draft format, it's not, finalized, so.
Can we get a
Yeah,
a
let me see
budget
if I can-
Right.
discussion
That would make more sense.
article, placeholder on the agenda so we can at least talk about it?
There's a budget update on there, but let me just see who's,
Oh, okay. So
Revised
as
draft
long as
agenda.
we don't get shut out of discussing it.
okay, so, Selectmen's meeting starts at 6:30 with joint meeting with CPC, to go over that process. At 6:50, oh, you've got you on there. Fiscal 2016 budget updates with Finance Committee, operating budget, capital improvements.
Thanks, let us know. It's good.
It's in draft, so it's,
Yeah, but.
Oh, yeah, well.
Gotta get
maybe it's on
We
that.
we weren't due to find out about that till Friday afternoon after 5.
Plus, do we have to post to be there, or does you do that since it's a joint meeting?
It's, yeah, when we do joint meetings, we typically cover everybody. I saw
So
the
you don't
10th.
even have to know, you don't have to
Yeah,
be there.
really.
Right.
And you missed the meeting you were
Crazy.
posted for.
What else is on there? Okay, so operating budget, capital plan, MAPC technical assistance grant. I don't know if that's what that is. Green communities, housing production plan update, master plan update at 7:30.
Okay, good. 2 for 1.
There you go, Paul.
This
Go a little
annual
bit
and
there.
special town
Master
meeting
plan update.
articles.
Good,
I'll send this draft out to you now.
all right.
It's,
So if we do that, you probably cancel the meeting Tuesday night then, right? Are we, no, we won't, we not,
What do we have?
no, we probably didn't have it anyway, because
We
every
don't
other
have-
week.
No, we did.
No, we did, because this was the
This was the
night
added
one.
meeting.
Bump this one up, right?
So we probably do Monday instead of Tuesday? Because I don't think we have anything, I mean, that's,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right. I'll send something out on that.
all right, I'll forward this off to you now, so.
It's still not to keep beating down the school department, but I'd like to see some FTEs from them, especially when, I believe you said Selectman Carr mentioned he wanted to see a level staffing for the school department, and you caught a position of 74,016 that was not in 14, they tried to add in 15, but I think it'd be great to see a staffing level of the school department going forward, so that not only we are
I mean, the worksheets were really helpful to kind of,
yeah,
pull that out.
and you would never have caught that stuff if we had followed prior practice. Same thing with retirement. I mean, we would never have known that 75, and some of this other stuff, we never would have known if we hadn't have been persistent with getting some detail and looking into the and analyzing their accounts and their budget to see where things are off. And I just think with staffing, if it's not on a spreadsheet, how are you going to catch it? I mean, not to say that they're adding positions and whatever, but I just think that every other town department is submitting a detailed staff list, and we're able to see the changes on a year-to-year basis, where with the school department, I mean, it's a $17 million budget. They spend like roughly $13 million on salary, so it'd be nice to see what consists, what the details are in that 17 million, so that every year it's recognized and we're able to, accurately see what's going on, where right now it's just kind of a rolled up number, but I guess we'll take it
And,
day by day.
We'll make
Just while
progress.
we're talking about schools too, I just wanted to kind of mention that what you sent out today, Bonnie, was interesting, the planning report you got that showed the actual school enrollment going down,
Yeah.
that doesn't take into account all the new housing, I guess, so.
well, what that study said was with an increase in housing, it didn't equate to,
Right.
with the increase in housing that we've had, it didn't
Right,
equate to.
but that's probably, we have some different increase in housing coming on board than we've had before, so, right? So we don't know.
There's a perfect example of the data that we should be seeing, which is student enrollment, teacher-to-student ratios, and then, like I said, back to the staffing levels, and just seeing, what goes on, so that if there's an uptick in student enrollment or whatever, we can see it coming, and all this information is just being presented every year, where we're not getting it from another organization or whatever, that's saying, hey, we think staffing is going down. I mean, or enrollment for kids is gonna go down, so, again, just more, I guess, importance of why we need to see more detail.
Well, I think it's helpful, too, to see the choice in,
Yeah,
choice
the
out
enrollment,
figures as
right.
part of that, because that's something that is, I mean, and districts are wise to use that as a means to kind of control.
Right, right.
Yeah, and they should be projecting that, so
Right.
when we're budgeting 400,000, we're estimating $400,000 receipts, there's some numbers tied to it. There's so many kids that are going in, there's so many kids going out, and we can appreciate the numbers, the detail that supports the numbers, so.
Do we know the choice now that they have, once they open those slots, they always get filled? I mean, is it pretty much, yeah? is it-
Once you're in, you're in.
No, but if they say, gee, we got 10 more slots, we'll take 10 more choice kids, they always get 10 more kids that apply and want to come here? You know what I'm saying?
I think they fill all their slots,
Pretty
if that's
much,
what you're
yeah.
asking.
I would think so, I just didn't
Yeah.
know how that worked, okay.
Because I think they're closed for, and that's the other thing, it'd be great to see, what grades are open? What's the detail on the school
I
choice?
mean, they're a good
you know?
district,
I know,
mean,
I know.
Yeah,
they're
it's a
not-
great
I know,
district.
it's a great
and-
district.
And like I said, just.
Wonderful school.
Seeing all this data, and like I pointed out with Groton and Dunstable, I mean, they put a 102-page superintendent requested budget that has everything in it. All their staffing, talks about MCAS, talk about student-to-teacher ratios and, everything. I mean, just, everything is all in one spot. So when you have to understand their budget, it's all there. And every year, you just update those numbers, and that's what gets presented, so that there isn't any questions of, how many kids you have, or
Other
school.
old timers at the table, remember when the budget came out years ago, it'd have, I guess that's just you and me, Fred, it would have had every employee listed by name and what they made.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
It should, we gotta get back to that, but like I said, it's
Every other
just-
town
it's-
department budget looks like that, so.
And that's, that's what other towns are really presenting, and I just think that we still just we have a lot more work to do with the school budget, and getting them, some accountability, more than what we're getting
just
now, so.
Briefly talk about Article
Sure.
16.
Which one, 16?
You talking about the annual town meeting now, Fred?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, because we're still waiting for Keith to come down, so if you want to go through some of this, the warrant here.
Is there any reason we can't deal with that without him here? I mean, I don't know that that's really all that.
CPC
Yeah.
stuff?
Is it all that complicated? I mean, we've gone over it, Betsy and I have, because he's presented to the.
Let's tell them we voted it down.
I'm inclined to go that way right now.
I mean, we could just adjourn and then say, oh, well, sorry, Keith. I don't think so. All right, go, so what do you,
16 is basically housekeeping. And is there a benefit?
Oh, 16's a good one, we like this one. Yes, so 16 is to rescind some unused borrowing authorizations.
Right.
For projects that have been bonded or were never bonded, or there pieces of it may have been bonded
Right.
and others not. So, the Cobb's Well is a good one, so there's 21,000 that did not need to go out to be permanently placed. Russell Street School Design, there was 267,000 that did not get placed, we paid that down inside the levy.
So we have to vote to,
Rescind it because it was never bonded.
doesn't just automatically go back to the general fund because it doesn't get spent?
It didn't get spent, so there's nothing to go back to the general fund. It's a borrowing
It's just
authorization.
the authorization.
Okay, so it's just the right.
So the
Just clean
authorization
our books.
hangs out there. and-
Okay, yeah, right.
so there's no
Clean up
cash,
books.
there's no cash
There's no
involved with
cash.
this?
It's really,
Okay.
really housekeeping.
Right. So the Russell Street School one is the big one. The
guess.
borrowing for Russell Street School was authorized when, the project was estimated to come in at 13.4 million.
Yeah.
Obviously, the project came in at like 10, maybe 10 and a half.
But we got a bigger reimbursement.
And we got half of that back from the state is reimbursement, so we're able to rescind almost $8 million in debt there.
What- I must have missed it. What happened with the Russell Street school construction? How did we, what?
Well,
said.
yeah,
You
the
just
bids,
explained, you weren't
she just went
listening.
over that. The bids came in much lower than expected, and the reimbursement came in higher than expected.
8 million?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, you remember when MSBA
like
made
the way
the
we do
change? Do you
No,
remember when?
I'm saying that's great. I was reading the detail when Bonnie was speaking, so I missed
A
her.
few years
her
ago, maybe you weren't
discussing
paying
it.
attention back then.
Oh, no, I guess. It's just finally nice to see the numbers that are,
It used to be that
coming in for
MSBA would pay you back annually as part of your cherry sheet. So you had to authorize the full project as
Right.
borrowing. Now they pay you upfront
Yes,
in
you
full.
Yep.
So we authorized it under the old way, So we authorized it for the 13.4 million, because that's what the total project was gonna be, and then MSBA said, we're gonna pay you up front. We're gonna give you a $5 million check now. So,
We said, okay.
So does that authorization get billed into tax bills and so on, that we're going to borrow this or not, or not
No,
until you
it's just-
actually
it's
borrow
just
it?
hanging out
Only when the
there.
appropriation's
Okay.
made, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So does retiring this, you know, or,
Makes my balance sheet look better.
That's it.
Yeah,
It really is
well,
just paperwork.
and
Yeah.
does it have a positive result on the bond?
Yes, it does.
rating?
Bond rating agencies look at what your authorized and unissued debt is, so this will reduce it. Even better.
Now,
It's a good thing.
in the well two redevelopment, they just aren't going to do that?
The 5,300?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, there's only
30,000, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I misread it. Yep. All righty.
And the track was authorized, but funded inside the
We did it
levy.
inside,
So,
right, okay,
yeah, so that's a good thing.
okay, great.
We've been waiting to bring that one forward, but we had to pay down the, do you want me to just walk you through the warrants, or, do
Yeah, why don't we do it?
you want to start with annual or special?
I have some questions on specials, so I'd like
Okay.
to start special.
Let's start with special. Bills of prior year, Article 1, I don't have any at this time. Typically, I don't, so I'm hoping that I won't, because it's a 9/10 vote, and nobody likes to count that one. Line item transfers, I don't have a list together yet. There typically are a few. I don't have any real flag waivers right now, but it might be legal. You know, I'll go through the legal expense budget and figure out if I need to do anything there. Typically, it's legal if it's anything else. As I mentioned before, we have that article there just in case snow and ice just continues the way that it's going now. Capital Improvement Plan adjustments. This is a placeholder for PMBC in case there were changes, because Bill had mentioned there might be changes that need to happen between buildings, and I know it was paving was part of that, and,
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that.
okay. After or now, or, I was going to try and attend your meeting tomorrow night.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just, it's not worth getting into
Okay.
the weeds tonight.
So some of these are the same that are on the 15 list, right?
Well, they're not the same items, but they're the same wording. So like there's the Littleton Middle,
114,000, isn't that on this?
oh, no, this is last year's list. This is from last fiscal year. There might need to be changes based on what I had heard, previously between these accounts.
Okay,
So we put it there as a placeholder. If PMBC meets tomorrow night and decides we don't want it, then it'll get pulled. It's just in there as a draft.
okay,
And the selectmen have not voted to insert it. It's just
okay.
a placeholder.
So, excuse me, Bonnie, when you met with Bill and
Joe?
Joe, you went over this?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep. Article 5 is for the water department, and Scott's going to come speak with you at your next meeting. I know.
Not tomorrow, next week, yep.
Okay. But basically, in their operating budget for this fiscal year, they're running short by way of appropriation. They're way ahead on revenue stream. They're about $500,000 up from what they had projected as revenue, with the rate increases and the fees and everything like that. But they have expenses associated with the new well site, the new station. So what Scott requested is this $160,000 in budgeted surplus, which is, it was budgeted in the surplus area so that if there were problems, it could be appropriated to other accounts. So he's looking to do $100,000 for capital improvements, which would be for the Cedar Hill Water, what is that?
Tower? What do you mean?
Tower, the Cedar Hill Tower.
Yeah.
And then another $60,000 to handle the expenses associated with the new facility coming online, the filtration facility coming online. So it is within their budget, they can
Yeah,
do that, it
cover.
just requires a town meeting approval to do so. And again, their revenues are ahead of what they're programmed. Borrowing, so this is for the Cedar Hill water tank. The plan is to not actually bond this project, but pay for it out of capital, money, reserves, their free cash when it's certified. So this is a temporary authorization so that they have the money to sign a contract in July or in June, whenever they're ready to go.
Okay.
But this will never be placed as a permanent borrowing. So they'll just pay it down in the next 3 years.
So he's gonna be using the 100 grand up top
Yep.
against the 700.
And then whatever comes in as free cash certified for the water enterprise fund, he'll use in the fall to kind of
to do
offset.
it. Great.
So it's a cash flow issue more than anything else.
That's a heck of a turnaround.
Yeah, huh?
Since he got involved with that.
Yep.
He's
Yeah.
done a nice job.
He's done a great job. He's been very forthcoming with the information and everything too, so it's really helpful. I mean, I've been over there a couple of times to try and walk through what he needs.
Well, I'm sure he appreciates your help,
Yeah.
too.
But
That's kinda
it's,
what-
it's nice to have the communication, so. The next one is roadway improvement supplemental borrowing. We need another $1 million borrowing authorization just to get New Estate done. New Estate's coming in, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million in the estimates, and I have 2 million in borrowing authorization right now, capacity, that I haven't used.
And the residents are gonna pay for it in betterments, right?
No.
Don't let them know yet.
Still haven't seen the little.
Little stakes up
Yeah,
there.
saying where it's gonna go,
There's no
but
banks.
I did see a vote that the selectmen took in December.
To do it.
Well, saying that there would be no compensation, although I remember the discussion at town meeting in the fall saying that that was gonna be discussed once it was laid out what property is being taken.
The last I heard, they don't have to take any property, they can do it all within the
Within
That's what I
what?
keep hearing. yeah,
the right-of-way that they've got.
Well, the
deeded-
right-of-way didn't exist until we voted it.
Well, it was deeded, it's the deeded right-of-way.
Yeah.
which is 50 feet of your
Exists.
front yard.
But they were worried that even
That's
within the
what,
deeded.
that's what didn't exist. That's what we voted, so that's the taking.
Exactly.
There was no,
Right.
Thank you very much.
The difference between where your property line ends and what was voted is what should be negotiable.
if they're taking anything beyond your deeded property line, they'll have to do that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, right, yeah, well, I mean, out of a good common
If it's so
courtesy maybe, but
straightforward, you'd
other
think
than
they would be a
that.
little more forthcoming with showing you the maps of where it's actually gonna go. And it's all right. It'll come
Anyway.
out in the wash.
This is,
It's a good thing you took that big tree down.
so this is for
I'm
that.
gonna take the other one down.
And then Article 7, Keith will kind of go through, but this was not voted to be inserted, it's just a placeholder for discussion at this point, but it's looking to allocate any other available revenues that might be sitting in receipts reserved for appropriation accounts to the CPC if they're eligible for that type of funding. One of them is the Reed Meadow mitigation funds, 46,000. 143 from the cell tower revenues that are unallocated to go into the open space reserve, and 29,000 in historic resources reserve from, here it is, from 15 Great Road mitigation funds that are still remaining. So this is something that's in draft format. The idea is to put them in to the Community Preservation Act fund so that we can maximize on the state match and get 30%.
Yeah,
There must be some interesting conversations going on upstairs with the fact that he's not down here yet.
Must be,
I
like,
would have thought that was a
yeah.
If the selectmen are gonna be voting it on Monday night after a presentation, why don't we just do it then with them?
Can do that.
We could. So you're talking about the CPC thing? Yeah, why not? Yeah, sure, otherwise we're going to have to sit through it again, we have to listen to it again. That's true.
We can assure you, we've
Are
gone
they-
through it.
They're going to vote for it Monday night, that's on the
Yeah,
agenda?
this is all, it's the first thing on the agenda.
Okay, I'm okay with that. That makes perfect sense,
And-
actually, yeah, right.
And Betsy and I can vouch,
Save
we've
your time.
seen it, there's
That's right,
nothing,
right.
there's nothing, it's gonna blow your hair back.
Pretty much what we expected, what's been.
But has it been
proposed
sent
so
out
far.
digitally? I didn't, no, okay, no, well, that should at least happen,
No,
everybody
I
should
think it
have.
has.
I've seen so many, emails on it, I don't
Well,
know
you and I
what's
may have
public.
Oh, that's right, we probably have seen it, but probably not everybody, that's true, because I know it has gone out, for sure. Yeah, it's-
I've got tons of emails on it.
Well, can
Okay.
you send it out to everybody, maybe
Yeah.
here? I mean, does Keith have to sign off on that, or?
No, I can send out what I-
Guess the only question I would have on Article 7 is, some of this is coming from mitigation. funds from different projects,
You know what, there's 2 Article 7s in here, did you know that?
or whatever the,
Should be 8, the last one should be 8.
Way improvement.
Which
Yeah.
one were you talking about, Fred?
The special.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
last page, the
Yep.
blended community.
Yeah, no, because it said 8.
And a lot of these funds are coming,
Eight,
are
so,
mitigation funds. Is it actually stated between the town and, say, Reed Meadow, that that money will actually be used for the stated purpose that we're going into CPA funds?
Well,
or-
by this vote, it goes into the community housing reserve. So
Right,
it would
but-
go into the bucket that would be,
Right. The town is voting to take mitigation funds and putting into the housing reserve. Is it defined between the town and Reed Meadow that that's what those funds?
Yeah. Well,
It says on here that they were. On this particular one, it says they were. It says the Reed Meadow as an alternative arrangement with the planning board for promoting and providing affordable housing. It sounds like that one, at least, it is.
Okay.
I don't know if they all
And we
are.
had that question with Keith, too, and
Right.
he said that going forward, articles could be
Uh-huh.
written in a way that it's contingent on that. A contingent, the monies are available contingent on it being appropriated for that project.
Right, but I can see town meeting putting money in for a specific project and then spending it on that project. into
It takes a
CPA,
town meeting vote
but-
to spend any of it, though.
Right, but my question is, if Paul Glavy sells or whatever to the town, or comes in to develop something in the town, and the town holds you up for $100,000 worth of mitigation funds, is it defined at that point that it's to be used for a specific purpose?
I guess the answer we
Or-
got is it can be if you word it that way.
Okay, so
Yes.
then my question
Doesn't
would
have to be.
Okay, but any of these that we're putting in, are they general fund, at this point, general mitigation funds? And I guess maybe the Reed Meadow mitigation is not in that category.
Reed Meadow is specific. The conservation, cell
Tower
tower ones
funds,
are
so it's
specific.
specific.
The 15 Great Road is not, is
Right.
general, and that one,
Right, so the general, I guess, is there a vetting process for, is this the best use for mitigation funds? Well, yeah, everybody, it's all well and good, it's like going to a sale, look at all
Yeah.
the money you saved. But,
That's the second phase, I think, of what Keith was rolling out, is that we want to have the process for how we can put monies in and out, and then they also, the CPC has to have a longer-term,
well.
Vetting
yeah,
process.
Theoretically, but.
I don't think that's,
just-
they're working on that now, but it hasn't been done yet.
Right, but who decides on the general mitigation funds going in? Is it Keith?
I
That
don't know if
brings,
that's-
the body that brings it forward has to, have some authority to do that, I would think.
It's
And
not.
not just
yeah.
decide.
It's not spoken to in our current fiscal policies, but it's anticipated as a place that we need language for. It exists as mitigation funds. That topic, as you well know, has
Okay,
come up
no,
within the
I just-
past year or two.
no, I
We don't
just-
currently have a town policy on it, but we recognize that we need one. That's one of the items that we're trying to come up with one
Okay,
for.
great.
Yeah.
That, as long as
Because
it's
to
addressed
date,
going forward.
when they've
Right.
come forward, they
That's all.
just kind of get handled on an ad hoc basis, and that's,
That's my only concern, is that.
Ours too.
you know, that
Nope.
The town needs a stoplight someplace, but it's used.
Nobody's written that
for-
language yet, but we know that needs to be, just like any of the other.
And there was also wording in the CPC amendment that, we may be putting it just into a bucket like for housing, affordable housing, or it may be for a specific project. So we can do either or both.
That's fine. And, yeah, Mitt seems, or I thought he was pretty comfortable when.
Yeah.
When he left here.
Right.
An hour and a half ago.
They may be having the, I don't know, Bonnie, do you think they're having the discussion of
Yeah,
their,
he was here right before we
the
started.
spending plan, which is the other part of this, as Paul mentioned, that we don't have yet, which is the
The budget part?
Yeah.
They could be, but
So, because that's a bigger discussion, right? And a very, very important for this whole thing to work well. But that is the other piece that we still don't have, is that this is getting the money in, but we're still still need the.
I'm okay as long
plan.
as the policy addresses
Okay.
the front end.
In the meantime,
So that there is not a
still snowing
disconnect.
merrily
Yeah.
away out.
So let's get out of here, right? That's the message?
Yeah, my wife
If we have
texts me the
nothing
same.
All right,
substantive
it's
to
not-
talk about,
Right.
All right, is there anything specific in the warrant for the annual town meeting, Bonnie, you think you should point out to us before we take off here?
I don't think so.
Pretty vanilla.
We have an article reserved for collective bargaining agreements if we reach any agreement by May,
What's out there
What's
for
out there,
contract?
yeah?
all of them.
Really?
All of them except school, right?
They
All
all
the town?
expire.
The school had a 2-year
15.
one, right? Not school, so, right?
not
No,
school.
all the town ones expire the end of this year.
In the schools did what, two?
Two.
That's all they did was two?
I think so. Hey, what the hell? It was
Yep.
better than one.
That's all we know about.
Didn't they do a,
No, it was a 2.
they didn't do a
I think it was a 2, right? Last year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2-year, we're talking, I thought they did 3% for year one for the top people, 1% and then 2%, so that would be 3 years, right?
I don't
Am I-
remember those
am I-
details. I'm,
Ronnie, am I,
I remember a 3, 1, and 2, but I don't know if the 3 was like effective the last day of the,
I think they went to
you know what I mean? I don't know
That's
the
right, it
date.
was-
'cause
is that what it
it's-
was?
it's
think that's
1
right.
year back and 2 years going
Right.
forward. That's
Right.
what it is, yeah.
They magnanimously
okay,
agreed
all right.
to 0
Right.
and then got it at the last day.
Right.
Right.
There is an Article 21 that talks about prohibit shedding water from private property. That may go away. That's,
What was the genesis of that?
I don't know, I think,
I know, I live on a hill. The
I was
water
gonna
goes
say,
down
same
the hill.
here.
where were we gonna put it?
There and stop it.
So, I don't know if somebody was,
That would be like government to pass a law to say water shall not go downhill.
it's like everybody's got a sump pump and,
Oh, okay. So
it's bylaw language in Provincetown.
Oh, no one,
All right.
Seriously.
yeah, well, I guess we know where that came from then.
Is there any,
Last-
is there any downhill in oh, yeah, there is, isn't there? Yeah,
well, there's
Little
less and
bit.
less Provincetown every storm, so.
Yeah.
Do we have minutes that we should have, that we've sent out that we haven't voted on yet? It seems like we should have, but,
Whatever our last one was.
But they're old now.
well, we still,
They're almost ours.
January 13th. Do you want me to resend them?
That was the last time we met.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because,
well,
you want me to resend them?
Yes.
So then we can do it next week?
Well,
Well, we're not gonna meet next week.
Yeah,
We'll do a
okay.
joint meeting on Monday. We could do it then, I suppose, but.
why don't you send them out?
I'll resend, okay.
All right.
Besides, they're not on your agenda.
I will go up and tell Keith.
That's true, too.
he's off the hook.
Yeah, we don't want anyone found in
Okay.
open meeting law violations.
Right.
All right.
Save him the-
Motion to adjourn.
Not gonna happen. We're doing it Monday night.
You are, okay, they voted unanimously to adopt the CPA appendix.
Did you have to bludgeon them to get them?
It's
to
2
do it?
hours for that?
No, well, they also, they were reviewing 2 funding proposals from the Housing Authority and the Historic Society, and those folks were actually sitting there, so we had that discussion first. $8,000 for UV windows for the Historical Society Houghton Building, $18,000 for heating systems at the Housing Authority. They adopted their budget, total of $222,000. Debt service, those 2 projects totaling $26,000, that's it. The rest is in reserve. They had a healthy discussion about Mitt Wanzer's proposal that they essentially establish the idea of a savings account and put money, at 50% of their unallocated funds to put it aside for future purposes. And then they adopted the CPA appendix as recommended unanimously, so.
And your
And-
suggestion
and-
off for the money's going in also?
And they also voted unanimously to support the monies going in. They had one amendment to the numbers that I presented, and actually I thought it was a great suggestion. the proposed article would put another $250,000 into the blended fund, 143, essentially taking the cell tower funds, which are used only for open space, put it in the open space bucket. $42,000 that we have, $46,000 that we have from a housing developer that's used only for housing, put it in the housing bucket. Then there was another $65,000 left over to reach the total of $250. And I had split it up between historic to bring it up to a certain level, a nominal level, and put the rest in undesignated. When we looked at Bonnie's numbers that she had crunched about what would the ending balances be in each of the buckets for, by the end of next year, over 100,000 in every bucket except historic, which only had 38 in it. So they wanted to beef up the historic, so all 65, so it would be 46 for housing, 143 for open space, 65 for historic. And I thought that was an excellent suggestion, and
So this goes back to a question I asked a little earlier, that the first two items that you talked about have basically been earmarked. The cell tower money, that 143
Yes.
is earmarked for conservation. And the Reed Meadow?
Reed Meadow
Was for
is for housing.
Okay,
Right.
so that's clear.
Those are,
The other 65 that you're talking about is not earmarked at this point?
it's not earmarked at this point,
Okay. And the source of those funds is what?
is the 15 Great Road
Okay.
mitigation fund, where there's still a very healthy balance, and we'll be getting another 450,000
Okay.
pumped in next year.
And the question I asked earlier was, do we have a policy on how, quote, undesignated funds, I guess that's a reasonable term.
Mitigation.
The undesignated
Unrestricted.
mitigation funds. So how do we decide what it's used for going forward? And apparently, we don't have a.
We don't have
policy.
it, except to say that by adoption of this blended CPA policy, we commit ourselves to having that discussion once a year, jointly between this board, the selectmen, and the CPC, to make an annual determination of what funds go into the blended CPA fund. Now, I suppose it could be that you could also decide that mitigation funds should not go
Right,
into
and
the
that-
blended.
Right.
there's a
That's the
holder
question
space
that I
in
had
the
was-
draft policies and procedures, just recognizing that that's a
Yeah.
topic we want to address in
Yeah.
writing, but we have no language for it as yet.
Yeah, and it's certainly something, since we're not going to get those undesignated funds until 2017, we have some time to work on it, because it'll be...
That just seemed to be a loophole that needed to be closed, and it sounds like it was
Yeah,
identified.
yeah,
and
it's
will
an,
be
it's
closed, that's
it's
all.
an excellent point, because we don't, because it's easy if the purpose, if the earmark purpose is a CPA purpose, then it's, we've been wrong before to use the term no-brainer, but it is to say, put housing funds in the housing CPA bucket. And when we don't, when we haven't designated the use, it requires a full discussion, because I mean, the bias for putting it in the CPA fund is if you want the state matching funds, but only if you've got a project that you want to pay for. If you don't have a project, then even if you get the state matching funds, you shouldn't put it in the fund. Excuse me.
Okay.
And that's another reason for CPC to have their long-range plan. that
Yes.
we had talked about
Absolutely.
before.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
So
and
it-
and
it
there was,
gives
it
you
was
some
a
guidance
long
for it.
discussion about, how do we, well, how is it going to work? Where do people submit their applications? When do we tell the public? And I said, well, I said, the one thing we simply want to avoid is someone walking into a CPC meeting and saying, here's my application, and it not being on anyone's radar screen. We just want to do as much early planning, encourage people through the long-range planning process to come forward with their proposals. So that we can at least write it down, okay, well, this one wants this, that one wants that, we can take those into consideration, we can have a funding plan, a strategy of how to address them. We didn't have to solve all of those problems now, so it's a unanimous vote on adoption of the CPA policy, and I think they made a good recommendation on where the funds should go. So we'll see you.
Monday.
Joint meeting on Monday.
Yep.
They'll be there as well.
Okay.
Do it then.
And they're on the agenda at 6:30?
When would you like? I'm trying to finalize the agenda. I think, 6:30.
Yeah,
Is that
it
what
was the
Mike,
first
is that what
one,
it
yeah.
said? Yeah, 6:30.
Fine,
It's
yeah.
okay with me, I just,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. They would be on at 6:30. A general budget update would be 20 minutes
Yeah, I
later.
think you had some 60
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
Okay.
Great.
A
Can I
motion to
sec-
adjourn on the table.
Can I second the motion?
All those in favor? All right, thank you, everybody.
That was the discussion on the motion to adjourn.